Imagine waking up every night with the feeling that something or someone is watching you. Now imagine discovering that this fear is not just a figment of your imagination, but part of a secret buried centuries ago. Helena thought she was running from a dark past, but in fact, she was walking straight into it. Do you think you know fear? Wait until you see what's about to be revealed. In this episode, a macabre discovery and an enigmatic object set in motion a series of events that could change the fate of an entire village, and perhaps much more. If you think you can handle the truth, stay with us, because what lies ahead is scarier than any nightmare. Believe me, you won't want to blink. If this story has you hooked and you want to discover the dark secrets behind this mystery, subscribe to the channel right now. That way, you don't miss any details of the next episode. Click the subscribe button and activate the bell, because the most shocking revelations are yet to come. Helena woke up that morning with a lighter heart, but still carrying remnants of doubt and uncertainty. The grey sky of the village seemed to reflect his emotions in transition. The night before, marked by his unexpected conversation with Mariana, still echoed in his mind. For the first time in a long time, Helena felt that she could take a step forward without carrying Rafael's weight on her back. She looked out the window of the small house she now considered her refuge. The ceramic table he had begun to carve in the last few days seemed unfinished, almost as if it reflected the state of his life. Still, there was something new there: determination. With a deep sigh, Helena tied her hair and went down to the kitchen. He needed coffee and a plan. As the kettle heated up on the stove, the sound of the howling wind outside was interrupted by gentle knocks on the door. Helena felt a chill down her spine. Unexpected visits were not common. When he opened the door, he found Mariana, who was holding a basket with fresh bread and fruit. "I thought you might need a little company today," Mariana said with a shy smile. Helena hesitated, but then made room for the other woman to enter. The kitchen, simple and welcoming, seemed more crowded with Mariana's presence. "Thank you for yesterday," Helena said, pouring coffee to the two of them. "I didn't expect you to go." She paused, searching for the right words. "Understanding." Mariana laughed softly, shaking her head. "I'm not a saint, Helena. I just know what it's like to be deceived. Rafael has this gift, if we can call it that." The two women stared at each other in silence, sharing an understanding that needed no words. The aroma of coffee filled the room, bringing a sense of normality. However, both knew that the storm had not yet passed. "What are you going to do now?" Mariana asked, breaking the silence. Helena sighed, looking at the cup in her hands as if it contained the answers. "I want to focus on ceramics. I need to support myself and keep myself busy. But, to be honest, I don't know where to start." Mariana smiled again, this time with more confidence. "I know some people who could help. Maybe you need to expand your horizons a bit. Will you come with me this afternoon? I have something to show you." Although reluctant, Helena agreed. Mariana seemed to have a purpose in mind, and deep down, Helena knew she needed to get out of her comfort zone. They spent the morning talking, exchanging stories, and, in a way, rebuilding parts of themselves. That afternoon, Mariana took Helena to the village's main market, where small merchants sold everything from fresh herbs to local handicrafts. The place was busy, and Helena felt a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. Mariana stopped in front of a stall that displayed hand-painted ceramic pieces. An elderly man with bright eyes and calloused hands greeted them warmly. "This is Mr. Arturo. He's one of the best ceramists I know. I thought you two should get to know each other." Arturo watched Helena carefully, as if he could see beyond the surface. He took one of the pieces that Helena brought in a bag, a simple dish, but with delicate details, and analyzed it carefully. "You have talent, girl, but something is still missing," he said, looking straight into Helena's eyes. She swallowed, feeling exposed. "What is missing?" he asked, almost fearing the answer. Arturo smiled, putting the plate back in the bag. Soul. His pieces are beautiful, but they don't tell a story. Come tomorrow, let's fix that. Mariana put a hand on Helena's shoulder, encouraging her. Despite the uncertainty, Helena felt something awaken inside her, a spark she hadn't felt in years. The next morning, Helena was at Arturo's house. His studio was chaotic but full of life. Shelves crammed with ceramic pieces shared space with paints, brushes, and tools. Sunlight poured in through the large windows, illuminating the dust that floated in the air. Arturo was sitting on a bench, fiddling with a lump of clay. "Come, sit down," he said without looking up. Helena obeyed, sitting down in front of an empty table. Arturo placed a piece of clay in front of her and stared at her seriously. "Show me what you can do. Don't think, just feel." Helena hesitated for a moment, but then began to shape the clay. His hands, long accustomed to movement, began to work instinctively. However, as he shaped, Arturo's voice interrupted his thoughts. "What are you feeling right now?" he asked. "I don't know. I'm concentrating," Helena replied. "That's the problem. You need to feel, not just think. Close your eyes." Reluctantly, Helena did as he asked. Without the sight, his hands began to move differently, guided by his emotions. Memories of Rafael, of the betrayal, of the clearing, passed through his mind like a whirlwind. His hands clenched and loosened the clay, reflecting his internal struggle. When he finally opened his eyes, he saw a strange and imperfect shape, but one that somehow seemed loaded with meaning. Arturo smiled. "This, my girl, is the beginning." The following days were intense. Arturo challenged Helena to explore her emotions and translate them into her plays. He asked her tough questions, forcing her to confront her fears and hurts. Helena realized that it was not only the ceramics that were being molded, but also herself. One afternoon, while working on a piece, he heard familiar voices outside the studio. When he peeked out the window, he saw Rafael standing on the street talking to someone. Her heart raced, but not from love or longing. It was anger, mixed with a desire to protect himself. Arturo noticed the change in his expression. "Who is he?" he asked. "A ghost from my past," Helena replied, trying to concentrate on the play again. Arturo didn't press it, but the look he gave him said he knew this story wasn't over yet. Rafael's presence in the village was an uncomfortable reminder of a chapter that Helena was trying to leave behind. That night, back in her small home, she could barely sleep. His heart was torn between fear of what his appearance might mean and determination not to allow him to ruin the progress he was beginning to make. At dawn, she returned to Arturo's studio with heavy eyes, but with a resolute expression. Arturo, who seemed to feel the weight that Helena carried, was waiting for her with a steaming cup of tea. "There are things that art can cure, but there are others that need to be faced directly, girl," he said in a paternal tone. "Maybe it's time for you to decide what to do with this ghost that is chasing you." Helena took a deep breath, feeling the truth in Arturo's words. She knew that sooner or later she would have to confront Rafael. But I still didn't know how or where I would find the strength to do it. While shaping another piece of clay, a familiar figure appeared at the door of the studio. It was Mariana with a worried expression. "He's asking questions about you, Helena," Mariana said, quickly entering and closing the door behind her. "Rafael, he wants to know where you are and what you've been up to." Helena felt a wave of anger and helplessness. It wasn't fair. Rafael no longer had power over her, or at least it shouldn't. Mariana approached, holding Helena's hands firmly. "You need to face it. Not for him, but for you. He will only stop when he realizes that you are no longer under his control." Helena looked at Mariana, drawing strength from the determination she saw in her eyes. I knew Mariana was right. She couldn't keep running away. "Where is he?" Helena asked, in a tone that surprised even herself. Mariana hesitated for a moment, but then replied, "In the market. He is talking to the merchants, trying to get information." Helena's heart raced, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was the anticipation of a confrontation that was inevitable. She stood up, wiped her clay-stained hands, and looked at Arturo. "I need to do this," he said, in a firm voice. Arturo just nodded, as if he knew that moment would come. Helena left the studio with Mariana by her side. The market was full of people, but she spotted Rafael immediately. He was standing near a tent, talking to a group of people. His confident posture and charming smile were the same as always, but now Helena saw beyond that. She saw the handler behind the facade. Taking a deep breath, she walked over to him. Rafael turned when he heard her footsteps, and for a moment, an expression of surprise crossed his face. But he quickly regained his composure, cracking a wide smile. "Helena! I finally found you. We have so much to talk about." Helena crossed her arms, keeping a safe distance. "There's nothing more to say, Rafael. You've said and done enough." Rafael's smile wavered for a moment, but he soon pulled himself together. "Come on, don't be like that. I've made mistakes, but we all deserve a second chance, don't we?" Helena laughed, but there was no humor in her voice. "Second chance? You had all the chances in the world, Rafael, and he wasted all of them. I'm not here to argue or listen to excuses. I'm here to tell you it's over. You have no more power over me." Rafael narrowed his eyes, his expression changing to something darker. "Is that what you think? You don't know anything, Helena. Do you think you can push me away so easily?" Helena took a step forward, facing him on an equal footing. "I don't think so, Rafael. I'm sure. And if you try anything, you'll find that I'm no longer alone." As she said that, she looked around. Merchants and villagers were watching the scene. Some whispered to each other, while others looked directly at Rafael with expressions of disapproval. Helena realized that she was no longer isolated. He had people by his side. Rafael, realizing that the situation was not in his favor, took a step back, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. "It's okay, Helena. If that's how you want it, I'll leave. But remember, no one knows you like I do." With these words, he turned and left, blending in with the crowd. Helena stood still, breathing deeply as the adrenaline subsided. Mariana put her hand on his shoulder, offering silent support. "You were amazing," she said, with a proud smile. Helena felt a mixture of emotions, but above all, she felt relieved. It was as if a huge weight had been lifted from his shoulders, but deep down, I knew that this would not be the end. Rafael could have left for now, but he wasn't the type to give up easily. She returned to the studio with Mariana, where Arturo was waiting for her. He didn't say anything, but the smile on his face showed that he was proud. Helena sat down again at the table, picking up a piece of clay. This time his hands moved with a new confidence, shaping something that was truly his own. Block 4. The days that followed Helena's confrontation with Rafael were marked by a sense of relief mixed with unease. Although he had left the village, the words he left behind still resonated in his mind. "No one knows you like I do." The phrase was a veiled threat, a reminder that Rafael knew things about her that could be used against her if he decided to return. Helena immersed herself in work in Arturo's studio, trying to find peace in creation. The clay in her hands felt like an extension of her soul, and each piece she shaped was a reflection of what she was trying to reconstruct within herself. Arturo watched her attentively, respecting her space, but always ready to offer words of support when needed. "Sometimes art is the only place where we find answers to questions we didn't even know we had," he said one afternoon, as Helena finished an abstract sculpture. Helena nodded, but her hands stopped moving. There was a specific question hanging over her, something she had been trying to avoid since the confrontation with Rafael. Was he really gone? And if he came back, how would she be prepared to deal with it? The fear that he might reappear at any moment was like a shadow that followed her, even in the quietest moments. Mariana, on the other hand, has become a constant and comforting presence. She visited Helena daily, bringing stories from the village and, occasionally, home-cooked food. Their friendship was a reminder that Helena was no longer alone. On one of these visits, Mariana brought something that caught Helena's attention: "I found this at the old bookstall in the market," Mariana said, handing over an old notebook with a worn leather cover. "I thought you might like it." Helena opened the notebook and found that it was full of blank pages, but when he flipped through it, he found something written on the last page. It was a simple sentence, written in a firm, ancient handwriting. "The secrets we hide can protect us or destroy us." The phrase intrigued her. Who would have written that? And why was it at the end of a notebook apparently never used? Mariana noticed Helena's expression of curiosity and asked, "Something wrong?" Helena showed her the phrase, and Mariana frowned. Maybe it's just a coincidence, or maybe someone wrote it as a warning to anyone who found the notebook. Either way, it's an interesting thought. Helena agreed but couldn't get the sentence out of her head. It was as if the notebook was speaking directly to her, as if it knew the secrets she kept hidden. That night, back at her home, Helena began to use the notebook as a diary. He wrote about his fears, his hopes, and his dreams. He wrote about Rafael, about the village, and about Arturo and Mariana. The words flowed like a river, and when she finished, she felt lighter. But when I closed the notebook, something strange happened. The sentence on the last page seemed to have changed. Now it said, "The past always finds a way to catch up with us." Helena felt a chill run down her spine. It was impossible. She was sure that the original phrase was different. Was he imagining things, or was the notebook more than it seemed? Determined to find out the truth, she took the notebook to Arturo the next day. "Do you think that's possible?" she asked, showing the phrase. Arturo examined the notebook carefully. He was a practical man, but also someone who believed in the inexplicable. "There are things in the world that we cannot explain, Helena. Maybe this notebook is trying to tell you something. Maybe it's a way for you to confront what you've been avoiding." Helena didn't know what to think, but one thing was clear. The notebook was now part of his journey. She decided to continue writing in it, recording everything that happened, even if she couldn't understand what was happening. Meanwhile, something strange began to happen in the village. Residents began to report unusual events. Objects disappeared and reappeared in different places. Unexplained sounds were heard during the night. Some believed they were just coincidences, but others were convinced that something more sinister was at play. Helena couldn't help but feel that these events were somehow connected to the notebook. And although she wanted to believe that Rafael was gone for good, a part of her feared that he was behind it all. But how could he be causing these events? And why? The tension in the village grew by the day, and Helena knew she needed to find answers. The notebook was the only clue she had, and she was determined to uncover its secrets, even if it meant diving into unknown and dangerous territory. That night, while writing in the notebook, she asked directly, "What do you want from me?" When he finished writing, the answer appeared on its own, as if an invisible hand had taken control of the pen. The truth. Helena was paralyzed, looking at the words. What did the notebook mean by this? And more importantly, would she be ready to face the truth, whatever it was? The following days brought a sense of growing urgency for Helena. The notebook continued to answer his questions in mysterious ways, providing information that seemed sometimes useful, sometimes enigmatic. Each word written on the pages brought a new fragment of a history that seemed intertwined with the village's past and somehow with Helena's very existence. The strange events in the village increased. Some nights, the sounds of footsteps echoed in the deserted streets, but when residents looked out the window, there was no one. Small landslides began to occur in the surrounding hills, revealing long-buried structures such as pieces of ancient walls and remains of objects that appeared to belong to another era. One such discovery happened on Arturo's property. While working in the garden, he found a golden medallion buried in the ground. The object appeared intact despite the weather and had an engraved symbol, a spiral surrounded by small triangles. When she showed the locket to Helena, she felt a strange familiarity with the object, although she could not remember where she knew it. That sounds important, Arturo said, watching her expression. Maybe we should take him to someone who can tell us more. Helena agreed, but something made her hesitate. The notebook was in her bag, and she knew it had the answers. As soon as he got home, he opened the notebook and placed the medallion next to it. Then he wrote, "What does that mean?" The words that came in response were clearer and more disturbing than anything else the notebook had ever said. "The medallion is the key to open the way. But beware, the path reveals secrets that should remain buried." Helena reread the words several times, trying to understand. The way, secrets that should remain buried? Curiosity was quickly replaced by fear. She knew the notebook never lied, but her answers always carried a dark weight. That same night, the village was seized by an unexpected storm. Howling winds tore shingles from the houses, and thunder echoed like a warning from the sky. Helena couldn't sleep, tormented by the events of the day and the words in the notebook. In the distance, towards the hills, he saw a strange glow. It seemed to come from the spot where the landslides had revealed ancient structures. "That can't be a coincidence," she muttered to herself, grabbing her notebook and locket before leaving. Helena ran through the wet and dark streets of the village until she reached the base of the hills. The glow was stronger now, pulsing as if it had a life of its own. As he got closer, he saw that the most recent landslide had revealed an entrance, a stone arch decorated with symbols identical to the medallions. She held the locket against the arch, and the symbols began to glow with intensity. A gust of wind blew from inside the opening, bringing with it a sound that sounded like a distant lament. The notebook, which was in his bag, began to heat up, as if it was reacting to the energy of the place. "That's crazy," Helena said, but at the same time she knew she couldn't go back. With a deep sigh, she stepped forward, crossing the archway. The world seemed to change around him. The sound of the storm disappeared, and the air became dense, charged with an energy that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. The place she found on the other side was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was a vast cave, illuminated by a natural glow emanating from the walls. In the center, there was a stone pedestal with something that looked like an ancient book resting on it. The book was open, but the pages were blank. However, as soon as Helena approached, words began to appear, written by the same invisible hand that used the notebook. "Welcome, Helena. You have reached the point of no return. What you choose now will determine the fate of all of us." Before she could react, a sound of footsteps echoed through the cave. Helena turned quickly, hoping to see Arturo or Mariana, but what she found left her frozen with fear. Rafael was standing there, his face half covered by shadows, with a smile that mixed triumph and threat. "I told you no one knows you like I do," he said, his voice reverberating through the cave walls. "You thought you could escape the past, but he always finds a way to come back." Helena took a step back, holding the locket tightly, but before he could say anything, the pedestal began to shake, and the book on top of it began to emit an intense light. Rafael laughed, a sound full of derision and satisfaction. "You have no idea what is about to happen, Helena." The light of the book grew, engulfing everything around, and then everything went dark. "So, what did you think of this twist? If you think things were already tense, get ready, because in the next episode, everything can change for good. Secrets will be revealed, and danger will get even closer. Don't miss it. Turn on notifications and stay tuned, because this story is just beginning to unfold. See you in the next episode.